Nice to see people showing up means you care. You care about yourself, your neighbors, and your community, and that's what this whole thing is about. It's together and looking out for one another. Very lucky tonight. We got a lot of keynote speakers. We got Jim Steele over here. We got Sheriff Brian Martins around, and we got Lieutenant Jason Ferguson from Lakeport PD. Jason has been over there for a long time. They've got a very effective neighborhood watch program. He also helped set up the neighborhood watch program over in Clear Lake, so you can imagine what kind of job that might have been down there. Anytime we can get a speaker with a lot of experience to help us out to make our program stronger, it's awesome to have. So tonight we're fortunate to have a lot of knowledge in the room. Feel free to ask any questions you guys want of these people. That's what they're here for. They love to answer those questions because they want to give you the right answers and put us in the right direction. Jason is our visitor from Lakeport PD, so I'm just going to go ahead and have him come on up and speak first, and he's going to explain where Lakeport started over there. Jason?
Thanks, Frank. As Frank mentioned, I've been at Lakeport for probably 17 years now, so I've been through all these times before we had neighborhood watch, when we picked it back up again. And when I was asked to come over here, I was actually really happy to come over here. I recognize that probably a lot of people don't, maybe all of you don't live in that great city, but at least I can help and provide some information that makes the program more successful. And I agree with Frank. By seeing all of you here, you obviously have a vested interest in your community, otherwise you wouldn't be here. Likewise, you also have a vested interest in partnering with your local law enforcement agency to be able to solve problems in your community, not necessarily neighborhoods, but your community as a whole. Law enforcement across the nation, we're all facing critical staff shortages. Things that happen here in our towns are happening in other towns when it comes to law enforcement. We're trying to figure out how to be more effective with less people on the street to do it. So it's more critical now, more than ever, to make sure we work with our community. You guys are really the backbone to help us identify our problems in our communities. That's what Neighborhood Watch is all about. And it's extremely successful. Really lends that assistance to law enforcement that we so desperately need. Ideally, we'd love to have, police officers for every single person around. That's not possible. We do what we can to be as effective as possible with what we're given. In Lakeport, we started the program years ago. It didn't really catch on. We didn't follow up with it too much. In 2007, we really started, or 2011, we really started kicking it up again. When we were really actively seeking neighborhoods to work together, to partner with us, the police department, and to try to really get the communication levels out there. And from 2011, we've done a really good job in promoting that, and citizens have really done a good job in assisting us with that. To date, we have 4 neighborhood watch groups that are in the city of Lakeport. 2 of them actually have signage and are actually signed up with us. And in the city of Lakeport, when you do that, your neighborhood gets these signs erected in your corners of your neighborhood. I see that you have signs here. Excellent idea. There's nothing that suggests, as a public group, you can't go out and do that. If you happen to live in the city of Lakeport and you are interested in forming a neighborhood group, we'll actually have the signs provided for you, and erect those signs and put them in your neighborhood. The Public Works puts those out. But these themselves, just alone, have deterred crime. When individuals, would-be suspects, come into your neighborhood and they see these things posted everywhere, it's definitely a deterrent, surprisingly, but it's a deterrent. So how our system works in Lakeport, we use a lot of social media outlets. I encourage all of you, because it's a free website, to look into nextdoor.com. Nextdoor.com is a social media outlet that all of you, regardless of your neighborhoods, can get set up in, and you can talk back and forth in your neighborhoods about what's going on. It doesn't have to even really be about suspicious vehicles. It doesn't have to be about, it can be about what John Doe's doing next door. It's not to be about privacy violation issues. It's really about what's going on in your community. It's a forum where you can put out to you guys, hey, there's a community meeting such as this tonight. Nextdoor.com is a great social media site that you guys can use to be able to talk to each other about things going on in your neighborhood. And it's a huge benefit. really encourage everybody in Lakeport to utilize that, and I believe currently my chief of police actively gets on there, sees what people are talking about, and includes himself in that conversation. So that's also really helpful as well. When we get contacted by citizens who are interested in doing a neighborhood watch, we really ask them and encourage them to go around their neighborhood and solicit people who would also like to be involved. Could we do it when one person says, "I'd like it in my neighborhood"? Sure. Is it as effective? No. What we really want to do is be as effective as possible. So we encourage that person to go around their neighborhood and find out other persons who have a vested interest in their neighborhood being safe, and get them on board. The wider the area of your neighborhood and the more people involved, the better your chances are to clean that neighborhood up and really keep the problems out of it. That's what we encourage. All of our, the 4 neighborhoods that we have right now are very much designed like that. There are 2 that currently have the signage posted right now in their communities, and the other 2 are still in process of that. So in Lakeport, what we'll do, we have a designated liaison officer for Neighborhood Watch. You would be given that email to that individual, and then we ask in your neighborhood that you designate a liaison from the neighborhood, so that all the information filters through that individual, and they in turn email the officer at Lakeport. And that's a variety of things that they're telling them. Hey, we have a suspicious vehicle parked in the neighborhood that's been here, it doesn't look like it's supposed to be here. The officer takes the information, sends it out to all of us, and an officer goes out, patrols the area, or keeps extra patrol out. That's typically how our neighborhood watch program works, and it's been really effective. Did you have a question?
Oh, I was just going to say, is it the same response would be at the county level as well?
Well, Sheriff Martin is here to talk to you about that, and
Okay.
I'm gonna let him tell you about that.
Unincorporated areas, in other words.
Yeah,
Okay.
what I'm talking about today is strictly in the incorporated area. I'm sure he's got things that he'd like to talk to you about, and I'll certainly let him do that. So, again, I'm here to just talk about some of the successes we've had, how we run the program. It's not necessarily works, maybe it doesn't work in this, with the Sheriff's Department being much bigger territory. But I agreed to come here because I think it is effective. I think it can work regardless of where you're at. And I think in the bigger communities, you really have to rely on social media to help you out. Social media and the technology age we're in is unbelievably helpful in the law enforcement community. This is a perfect example of that. Through Facebook, I know probably all of you are familiar with the Nixle system. That comes out through your cell phones when things are going on, alerts and things of that nature. A lot of press releases come out via the Nixle. So through social media, you get so much more information, and that's been extremely helpful because you can also talk amongst yourselves, not just through law enforcement, but it allows us to know what's going on in the community as well. So getting back to what I was saying, that's how we do it. We have our liaison take the information, they then spread it out to the officers, and the officers go and handle whatever calls may be. Some of the successes we've had, definitely stolen vehicles have been recovered from neighborhoods where cars have been left there. Neighborhood watch folks get alerts and say, this car doesn't look like it's supposed to be here, it's been here a while. I've personally been involved in a suspicious subject that was in the neighborhood, who upon contact, fled, all kinds of things, had a gun in his backpack. That's the benefit of this, because 90% of the time, we may not see that person driving by or not think that that person doesn't fit in that neighborhood. So with the help of Neighborhood Watch, we were able to take care of some of those issues that came about. So it's been really successful. We're going to continue to do the program. And again, I encourage all of you to work together in unison with your local law enforcement and develop your own programs amongst yourselves, just like you had here. This is great. We'll work with each other on this, and I strongly encourage you, if you haven't written it down, it's that nextdoor.com. It's a really good social media outlet for you guys to do that. Does anybody have any questions? I kind of know that quickly. Other people have to speak here.
A month or so ago, we had a problem in our neighborhood. They were finally evicted and moved out. They killed a bunch of cats. And anyway, Dotsy, the next door neighbor, she was in an argument with one of them because a couple of the cats were her cats. The Highway Patrol and Sheriff never came out. We called them a couple of times. And then she got in an argument with them. This guy was pushing her back. And we called the cops and still nobody ever showed up. And it was, I had to go over and get in between him and her because he was threatening to kill her and everything else. They never did anything. And then the tweakers that were living there with them moved over to Nice, and they keep driving through the neighborhood at 2 and 3 in the morning. I don't sleep well at night, so.
You live in the city of Lakewood?
No, I live in Upper Lake.
Okay, so it's very difficult for me, I understand your
No, but I
question.
mean, why is it that we call them, and sometimes it takes 2-3 hours to get somebody else?
Unfortunately, that's not a question for me to answer. Again, I'll let the sheriff know that, that's his jurisdiction, and,
I
so
think that's a lot of our issue.
I'll deal with that. But unless anybody has any questions for me, I will say that it's very effective, but also people have to have a little bit of understanding that sometimes in the court, we may be working by ourselves, can't necessarily get to everything right away. And sometimes as long as people understand that and get a little more educated on how that works, it tends to maybe reduce a little bit of that frustration they have. Yes?
Can I just say that I'd be willing to bet that if more people got involved with a neighborhood watch, then the credibility of making those kind of calls would go up, exponentially. Just the response of the sheriff's department or the PD, whichever, whatever applies, would be greater because they would say, oh, you're part of the neighborhood watch and this is what our mandate is. We're trying to follow through and make sure that our community stays safe and what have you. So I just think that in the past, we could all allude to stories that things haven't worked out or what have you, or it's been difficult to get, the response time hasn't been the best and what have you. But if we get involved, and that's what I think empowering about this is because we can get involved, the likelihood is we're going to have more influence in the process. We're not going to make the arrests, obviously. We're not going to get into people's faces and what have you.
Right.
But we're going to have more input into the process as a collective unit trying to say, we're not going to deal with this. I'm not going to go to bed every night being afraid or fearful, whatever might come to pass.
Right. And I want to just add to that, part of our success, I'll say a large part of that success of this program is the fact that our jurisdictional boundaries are much smaller. And it's much easier for us to address an issue in our smaller community. Our population is just under 5,000 people. Right now we have 11 police officers to deal with that. So it's a little easier. Part of our success comes from the fact that we're a little bit smaller community. So, and I hope you all understand that when we're talking about a large county such as this, you have to magnify those issues a little bit more. It's a much larger territory address, much larger territory to cover. I'm not saying it can't be successful, but it's certainly, like you said, it's going to require a lot more to go on board to make this program and make your neighborhood safe.
Well, I'm in the Clear Lake Riviera, and so that in and of itself is like 2,500 homes. So right there, as far as I'm concerned, that is a small city, okay? And if we're working, we're under neighborhood watch in these various different areas, Upper Lake or wherever it is, then I think that the response and what have you is going to be more coordinated. It's going to be more likely that it won't be an isolated incident. It'll be a collective kind of credibility that will come out of that.
Very, very likely to be the case. Again, I'm going to let Sheriff Martin talk about that.
Yeah.
Again, that's in his jurisdiction.
Sure.
So, and unless anybody else has any questions on the program itself.
Well, I think this is kind of an ignorant question, but the Lakeport meeting, you have your police department that's only Lakeport.
Correct.
And the sheriff's office covers everything else.
Yeah.
Except
For
for
those of you that
So
are
Lakeport gets, all these, or gets, not all of these, because I know there's not a lot of you guys, but basically you guys cover that one area and the rest of us are screwed.
No, I mean, that's it's not necessarily the case because the
That's what we're
organization
doing
is bigger.
neighborhood watch.
Yeah.
There are two cities within the county of Lake that that there are municipalities that have police posts. That's Clear Lake and Lake Laurel. Surrounding territory belongs to the county unless it's a highway, which is California Highway Patrol, or state lands that belong to BLM and such as that. But for the most part, that's how it is. Yeah.
But even the cities that have their own police department, and they have the privilege or the ability to have the sheriff's office back them up in a major problem, not provide themselves.
Correct, and they do that regularly. We're very thankful for that because we have our share of violent crimes and problems, and it's been really nice to have that partnership with them. So likewise, we will assist them in the time of need and places where they need officers. So. Okay. Yes.
The signs,
Yeah.
you said Public Works provide those to your director, to Lakeport?
We will provide them so long as you live within the jurisdiction of
So
Lakeport.
it's the city.
In the appropriated city, yeah, and we provide them through the police department, Public Works Bureau.
All right, well, thanks.
Thank you.
Some of the questions you guys are asking, we're going to cover once Sheriff Martin finishes his little speech here today for you guys. And I know you're going to have lots of questions for him surrounding the county, and that's great. But we'll talk signage and how to get signs and how to get these things put out. Public Works will do the same for us in the county, putting up the signs for us. We just have to pick our zones and where we want our signs to go. But these guys are very busy. I know Sheriff Martin's on his way to Pismo Beach this weekend or something, so he wants to get the hell out of here. So we're going to let him get up here. And again, you know, guys, here's the time to share your concerns. If you've got a question, ask it. Don't hold back and don't walk out of the room going, I should have said that or I should have mentioned that. No, share your concerns. That's why we have these meetings, so we get together. Because you might be thinking the same thing the guys next to you thinking, you both don't ask it and nobody gets an answer. So at this point, Sheriff Martin, come on up.
I'll answer some of the questions and kind of give an overview of what our staffing issues are like and why. I hate to hear people say you feel like you're doing screener, but hopefully after I explain to you what our staffing situations are like, you'll get an understanding of what we have to deal with. But before we get to that, I'll talk about the neighborhood watch programs. And if you've been to one of my neighborhood watch meetings before, you'll probably hear some of the same things I said before. But these are really about the community getting involved. This is a community-based program. It's up to community members to participate in order for them to succeed, because you are force multipliers. You are there in the community 24 hours a day, unless you're at work, and you see what's going on where we simply cannot be there. There are times where if you call it, sometimes there's a delayed response. We just simply can't be there. What you can do in the neighborhood watch is either be an effective deterrent to crime or be present and be good witnesses when crimes do occur. Kevin's been very instrumental in taking the charge here on the North Shore. He's even reached out, I'm assuming, to the Lake Clear Rivieras. So Kevin really epitomizes what this community spirit is about. It takes somebody to get involved in that. Thank you, Kevin, for doing that. I'll tell you some stories that happened with after the first neighborhood watch meeting that I went to. One of the things I learned really quickly is that the issues that were important to me as the sheriff or a police officer or somebody in law enforcement, the things that I have in mind that are important to the community aren't necessarily what you as a community have in mind. So this is a great forum to let us know what's going on in the community, what things are of concern to you, because he might be wrong. And my ideas of what was going on in the conservative areas were completely wrong. They brought up the fact that they have a motel there that's been converted from motel to kind of long-term residency, and with the help of Supervisor Steele, who's sitting back in code enforcement, we decided to take a multi-pronged approach at this to kind of address the issues that were going on there. There was indications that there were stolen cars being run in and out of there, drug activity, fights, drinking, partying, people squealing in and out of parking lots. And a couple good things happened right after that meeting. And I say good things tongue-in-cheek because the first one was actually a good thing. We got code enforcement called to go over there and look at some of the issues. But there was a fire at the Lake Haven Motel, in which the gentleman tragically lost his life. The situation at the Lake Haven Motel was, there was a lot of similarities, I think, between what was going on there and what's happening at this, the motel in concern, where they converted it over without the proper permits. It was being used in a manner that it was supposed to be. So while tragic, that really highlighted the point that these concerns that the neighbors had about quality of life issues, something that we can address, and that really put a stamp on why that's important. The other thing that happened was this gentleman decided to get in a fight with his girlfriend. Somebody came out to be the knight in shining armor, and this guy got mad, went inside, grabbed a gun, and started shooting up the place. He started shooting at several people there. Of course, the cops get called. It takes us a few minutes to get there because we're in the county. And while that happens, this guy takes off running, trips over a couple of fences, I guess, gets tired along the way. And neighborhood watch people that have been at that meeting, followed this guy basically through there and were able to walk the cops in and take him into custody. You know, had they done that, if they weren't involved in neighborhood watch, maybe, but knowing that they weren't out there alone, knowing that you had your neighbors, your community members there with you to support you, is very empowering. You know, you never want to be told, hey, go fight the neighborhood bully, and you run out there, I'll take the bully out of your bag. Nobody there. So the neighborhood watch, you know, you're a group, and you're restricted numbers, and so those are some of the good things that will come out of these neighborhood watch meetings. A couple pointers that I have for these meetings is keep them interesting. You want people to come, have food, have a potluck, they have a potluck at concern, and a whole bunch of people showed up for that. Have different speakers come. Law enforcement will always come and participate in these, but also have other people come and talk about areas of interest. Supervisor Steele always loves to talk. And we also had a representative from Public Services come and talk about the process for getting streetlights put in. Not my area of expertise, but to have somebody come and explain what it takes to get that in there, the budgetary concerns, how you can get one a streetlight installed simply by going to PG&E and going through that process. There's all kinds of interesting things that you guys can bring in. If you keep the interactions interesting, people will continue to come to these meetings, so it's important to keep them away. Questions that I have about the response. I'd like you to give me a call and tell me when that occurred, because Mr. Rates. I can't look
It was
down.
on a Saturday, and I can't remember the date exactly, but it was the same weekend, that Sunday night, you guys went after a motocross bike going down 20. There was about 6 cars involved. That was one of the guys. And they went after him, chasing him towards Nice, about midnight. About 10 o'clock. It was dark. It was late in the evening. Those guys, we called a total of 3 times on incidents at that house. And then Dotsy had been looking for her cats for a month. And then when they were pulling all the trash out of the house, the kids from the school made dozens of phone calls to the county because there was a pile of dead cats in the driveway. These guys are just slimeball tweeters. They were also caught out on...
Next door to that one.
and they were also caught out on Middle Creek, breaking into people's crops. One of them got his ass thumped pretty hard because of it. But they are now living in Nice, and they're going down the road at 2 o'clock in the morning all the time, 5-10 miles an hour. And in this big tan, 3-tone, light brown pickup. And the other night, I just turned the light on, and I was standing there in the front door, and they flat out took off.
These are exactly the type of things that we want to bring up in neighborhood watch meetings. So I pass that information on to my patrol commanders and sergeants. We'll let somebody patrolling extra in the neighborhood and look into that.
And I'm also the one that's called 4 times in the last year for vandalism on the elementary school. Caught a guy getting into the teacher's lounge once night. Kids out there at 3 o'clock in the morning throwing shit, breaking glass, you know.
One thing that's important, that's not us doing this. You know, when you
Well,
get
I
angry,
understand that, but
please don't get angry.
But what I'm
Law
saying,
enforcement. Yeah.
what I'm saying is that when I heard the breaking glass, you know, I heard glass breaking. I knew something was going on. I called. Cop never showed up all night long. And then the school the next day, they said, oh yeah, they broke a couple windows. They spray painted all kinds of stuff. So all this was going on, and we never had a cop show up.
I wish I had the access to my computer, so I'm looking to right now.
Now, who's the best person to call is what I was getting at. Because we called 911, and it's like they don't know where we are.
You call 911 on a cell phone?
No, on our landline, but it's the same thing, it's UMA, so it doesn't really give you the address.
Okay.
But we give them the address and stuff, and one time they said, well, we're out here in Lakeport, and we can't find them, and we said Upper Lake. You know, and they're looking on 2nd Street in Lakeport, and we're like, we're in Upper Lake, you know, across from the elementary school. And it's just, it seems like we're forgotten out there. A lot of times, nobody ever shows up.
We heard you.
And
Don't ever call him Mr. Rates again. I'm Mr. Rates, that's my.
I'm Clark.
Anyway. Okay. As far as, and like I said, I'm not offering this as an excuse, but I'm offering this as an explanation, and so you understand what we deal with as far as staffing issues at the sheriff's department. We have currently about 55 deputy sheriffs, including myself. We have 7 vacant unfilled positions, and on patrol, I generally have 24 deputies and sergeants assigned on patrol for the entire county, 7 days a week, 24 hours a day, which means about 6 people on duty at any given time. When you take away deputies being sick, on vacation, not working night shift because they have to be in court, not being out on the street during the day because they have to be in court, those are some of the reasons that it takes us quite a bit of time. Our patrol